Lewis and Clark and Me, A Dog's Tale by Laurie Myers, illustrated by Michael Dooling. Sometimes, in my dreams, Lewis and I and the Mandan Indians are chasing buffalo across snow-covered plains. The smell of buffalo fills my nostrils, and the rumble of the herd echoes in my ears. Sometimes George Gerard, our best hunter, only wounds a deer that is swimming across the river, and I swim out to retrieve it. The deer tries to get away, but I am much too strong and too good a swimmer. The men cheer me on from the banks. Sometimes it's just Lewis and me. We stand by the great falls, and the spray from the water mists our faces. We walk along the sandy beaches of the Pacific Ocean for the first time. Or it is just a typical day when Lewis and I hike through the woods together, while Clark and men row or sail the boats on the river. My dreams are more vivid than life itself. Everything is brighter and clearer. The smell of the woods is richer, and the desperation of the prey is keener. The victory sweeter. Sometimes when I'm dreaming, a well-meaning person sees my nose twitch or my legs jerk. "It's okay, boy, it's just a dream," they say, and they pat my shoulder. Just a dream. They say it as though it were some small and insignificant experience, not worthy of attention. They don't understand. I love my dreams. I don't want them to end. They take me back to a place that I was made for. Back to a place that makes me alive. The most beautiful place in the world, the wilderness. "Seaman!" I glance back at the man beside me. "Look alive. Here's Byers." Something caught my attention. Behind him, down the wharf, a group of men. But I only saw one. It was Lewis. He was a full head taller than the other men I had known on the docks. And he was dressed in a different way. White breeches and a short blue coat with buttons that shone in the sun. A tall pointed hat with a feather made him look even taller. Lewis walked along the dock with large stride. There was a purpose about him. My life on the wharves was good, but I was a young dog, and I yearned for more. At the time, I didn't know exactly what, but I sensed that this man was a part of what I wanted. I sat straighter as he approached, and the man who owned me sat straighter too. Lewis slowed. "Need a dog, sir?" my man asked. "I'm looking," Lewis replied. He stooped down and he looked me right in the eye, and I wagged my tail and stepped forward. I wanted to sniff this strange man. He extended his hand for me. It didn't smell like any I had ever seen or smelled, and it made me want to sniff him all over. Lewis scratched the back of my neck where I like to be scratched. "I'm headed out west, up the Missouri River," Lewis said. My man's face brightened. "This be the perfect dog, sir. These dogs can swim. Newfoundlands, they call them. Rescuing a drowning man in rough water or in a storm. Look at these paws. You won't find another dog with paws like that. They's webbed." He spread my toes to show the webbing. "So they are," Lewis replied. Lewis began feeling my chest and hindquarters, and his hands were large and muscular. "Water rolls off his coat," my man added. He pulled up a handful of my thick, dense double coat. Lewis examined my coat and he nodded. "I know the Mississippi, sir, but I don't know the Missouri," my man said. "It's off the Mississippi, heading northwest." "North, you say? Ah, it'll be cold up that river." "Won't bother this one, though." He patted me firmly on the back. Lewis stood and he looked around and he found a piece of wood that had broken off a crate and he showed it to me and he threw it. "Go," he said. I wanted to go. I wanted to do whatever this man asked, but I belonged to another. I looked at my man. "Go on," he said. I ran for the stick and I returned it to Lewis. "How much?" Lewis asked. $20, and a bargain at that." Lewis looked down at me and I lifted my head proudly. "You won't find a better dog than this. Perfect for your trip," my man said. trying to convince Louis. It wasn't necessary. Louis wanted me, and I could tell. He had liked me the minute that he saw me, and the feeling was mutual. Louis paid my man $20. Does he have a name? Louis asked. I've been calling him Seaman, but you can name him anything you like. Come, Seaman, Louis called. As we walked away, my rope in his hand, and he put his other hand on my head. And after that, he didn't need a rope. I would follow this man to the ends of the earth. Chapter 2. Squirrels. I caught fish off the docks, and I chased animals in the woods, but hunting came alive for me on the river. The Ohio, Louis called it. I've always loved the water, so the day we boarded the boat and pushed out onto the Ohio River was just about the happiest day of my life. Louis was excited too. I could tell by the way he walked, and his voice was louder than usual. The men were also excited. I could hear it in their voices. They didn't complain when they loaded the boat. Louis was telling them what to load and how to load it. Anyway, that afternoon, Louis and I and some men started down the river. I rode in the back of the boat. It was the highest place, and it gave me the best view. From there, I could scan both banks and the water with just a glance. The first 2 weeks, I couldn't get enough of it. There were animals I had not seen before, smells I had not smelled. My skin tingled with excitement. The river was low, and the men had to pole much of the way, and when they weren't poling, they were digging channels for our boat or hiring oxen to pull the boat from the shore. We were only a couple of weeks down the river when I had my first great day of hunting. The river wasn't quite as shallow and the current not too strong, so the crew rowed along leisurely. I was lying in the back of the boat, and I had just scanned the shore. Nothing of interest, just a few beaver and a deer. I decided to close my eyes for a nap. I blinked a few times and was ready to lay my head on my paws when something in the water up ahead caught my eye. I stuck my nose in the air and I sniffed. I recognized the scent immediately. Squirrel. Squirrel on water? That was unusual, and I had seen plenty of squirrels, but I had never seen one swim. There was something else strange. The smell of squirrel was especially strong, and I had never known one squirrel to project such a powerful scent. I stood to take a look. Right away, I spotted a squirrel off the starboard side. He was swimming across the river. Another squirrel followed close behind, and without a second thought, I leaned over the side of the boat to get a better look. I saw another squirrel, and another, and I could not believe my eyes. Hundreds of squirrels were crossing the river. The water up ahead was almost black with them. Every muscle in my body tightened to full alert. Louis was on the other side of the boat, talking to 2 of the men, and I turned to him and barked. "What is it?" he asked. It is impossible to describe the urge that I felt. It was as strong as anything I had ever known. I had to get those squirrels. I barked again. Louis scanned the water ahead. "Look at that," he said to the men. "Squirrels crossing the river. Now why would they do that?" "Food?" one man suggested. Louis paused for a moment. "There are hickory nuts on both banks." "Migrating?" suggested the other. Louis nodded. "Maybe. Or perhaps they're—" I barked again. They were wasting time wondering why the squirrels were crossing. It didn't matter. The squirrels were there, hundreds of them, right in front of us. Sometimes men spend too much time thinking. They miss the fun in life. "They'd make a fine supper," the first man suggested with a smile. Louis nodded. He looked at me. "Let's see what you can do, Seaman. Go on. Fetch us a squirrel." That's what I was waiting for. I sprang off the boat and I hit the water swimming. I was going to get every squirrel in that river for Louis, and my webbed feet made it easy. I reached for the first squirrel in a few minutes. When it saw me, its eyes bulged in fear, and it tried to steer its sleek, fat body away. In one swift move, I grabbed it by the neck and killed it. I carried it back to the boat. Louis leaned over the side and took it from me. Good dog, fetch another, he said. The crew had stopped rowing and the boat drifted slowly toward the mass of squirrels. Look at Captain Lewis's dog, yelled one of the rowers. I turned and started swimming again, and I could hear the men cheering me on. In 2 strokes, I was on another squirrel. Good dog, Lewis yelled. Go. Go, the crew echoed. Go, seaman, go. I went and went. Over and over I went. I went until I was exhausted. I don't know how long it lasted, maybe 1 hour, maybe 4. All I know is that when I finished, there was a pile of squirrels in the boat. Lewis and the crew were laughing and cheering all the rest of the day. The men were patting me and saying, good dog and good boy, and we'll be eating good tonight. The admiration of the crew was great, but the look of pride on Lewis's face was better than all the men's praise added together. That night, the men fried the squirrels and we ate well. In the 3 years that followed, I hunted almost every day, but the squirrels on the Ohio were my favorite.